If it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
Another episode of the Out of Bounds podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. My name is Nate Sharman, next to Josh Durso. Josh, pretty good weekend for golf despite not having a lot of the headliner players, especially for the PGA Tour, but still a fun weekend.
Yeah, fantastic weekend for golf. Interesting because it was a good litmus test. We're going to get into that a bit, but a good barometer to see how these non-elevated events can do.
Yes, good barometer for that. And then the LIV Tour started this week with their first event in Mayakoba this week.
Yep.
Chares Howell won there. But we'll talk about the PGA Tour first. Chris Kirk gets it done. His 5th PGA Tour win, which is pretty crazy to think about. He's been on the tour since about 2011 when he was a rookie there. He hasn't had a win in a number of years. A really cool story, though, for Chris Kirk. You know, he's battled alcoholism. He took a break from the PGA Tour in 2019 to get some help, which is a really, really cool kind of underdog story for Chris Kirk. There was some dramatic, though. On 18, he had a one-stroke lead, and 18's a par 5 at the Honda Classic, and he went for the green on his second shot. It was an over 200-yard shot, and it landed, 4 to 6 inches short to a semi-island green, well, more so a peninsula, I guess, and it hits the rock short of the green. It kicks back into the water, probably about 30 yards, almost hits the Honda car that's floating
tough
on the lake.
Real tough.
So it's pretty funny visual, really, with the ball kind of soaring past the car. In reality, when I was watching it live, and I thought Chris Kirk just sliced it.
Yeah,
I thought he landed it over there.
Exact same thing.
But there was a hard noise. And you watch upon replay, it was remotely.
It was
close
just
to
the camera angle.
Yeah, it was just kind of, and it was like, I mean, and he didn't really. If he would have done that, he would have been like, "What the heck?" and reacted poorly. He didn't.
Yeah.
He just mishit it, or maybe not even mishit it, but barely missed the green by inches. And so he makes bogey there. Eric Cole, which we'll talk a little bit more about, makes par to force the playoff. And then in the playoff, Kirk hits this unbelievable third shot to about 6 inches. Makes birdie. Eric Cole's not able to get up and down from the bunker to force the next playoff hole, so Kirk ends up victorious. 5 PGA Tour wins for Chris. Just an amazing story, and it was a lot of fun to watch.
Feast or famine, and really, in hindsight, really appropriate the way the last couple 3 holes played out for Kirk too, because you look at how he's played so far this year, and he's got 2 missed cuts, and he's got 3 top 3 finishes.
Yeah, he's been around. He's been
so it's like it's either boom or bust, and nothing in between. And you saw the really bad luck of that shot on 18, and then to turn around and just hit an incredible shot coming in on the playoff hole. That's just that's awesome. He's also got maybe the smoothest swing.
Oh yeah,
I've seen in a really long
nice.
time. He's got that little pause at the top, and it's just really momentum-based and doesn't look, I almost compare it to like an Ernie Els style swing where it looks effortless even though there's clearly a lot of power behind it.
Right.
So just a really, really cool thing to see. And who knows, maybe he can use some of this momentum and keep it going. I mean, nothing wrong with top 3, top 5 finishes.
Right. And it's just, everyone's talking this week. A lot of the big guys aren't playing. They've been playing a lot, and then next week starts another big run for them. So a lot of guys opted not to play. And we talked about that a little bit last week, and we saw a lot of discourse on social media about that. But I just really want to give kudos to Chris Kirk. Just going out there and taking advantage of a day where a lot of those big names aren't playing. And
a lot of money on the line.
A PGA Tour, a lot of money still on the line. Not as much as Elevated Lens, of course, but still a PGA Tour wins, PGA Tour win. You can't take that away from him. And now he has 5 of them. I remember texting you after, and I said, Chris Kirk, guess how many PGA Tour wins? And I don't think anyone would have answered 5, any common golf fan.
Yeah, no way. No.
So pretty impressive. And they're all not throwaway wins either for Chris Kirk. One was a playoff event.
Yeah.
So, that's a high-stress situation. So credit to Chris Kirk for being able to get that done.
I also want to say, I know you said not as much money, and I know, the elevated events have just absurd amounts of money being thrown around. But, Runner-up here, Eric Cole, banked a little over $900,000.
Right. Yeah, we should talk about him.
A little over $900,000. Like, I know they aren't elevated events in the same way that the other the elevated events are.
Yep.
From the financial side, but good grief, this is awesome for these guys who are playing in these events. You had no name brand player, and
Right.
Effectively you had the opportunity for any of these guys to jump out there and bank a mill if they win. That's awesome.
Yeah, credit to them. Eric Cole, his first year on the PGA Tour, he's a rookie in his mid-30s. You know, he's been battling for so long. He's been on the Corn Ferry Tour for about 5 years, trying to make it big into the PGA Tour. So pretty cool with him. He also has a cool story, too. He dealt with some hardships, a passing of a family member, and some other hardships, too. So credit to him. You know, he earns that solo second, earns, like you said, a little bit north of $900,000. His previous earnings from the PGA Tour, from the few events this year, and the Corn Ferry Tour in his career totaled to about a little less than $700,000. So he more than doubles his career earnings by playing golf and earns that solo second. And then plus, besides those earnings, he gets a ton of FedEx Cup points, vaults himself into the 30s for the season. So that sets him up in good position to be able to retain his tour card for next season.
It opens up all kinds of doors.
Right.
And, you know, it hasn't really been talked about that much, but I think that's probably the biggest opportunity that won't get a ton of attention that these non-elevated events present to players.
Right.
Especially these guys who are new faces to golf. They can very quickly become familiar faces in golf just by, you know, finishing well in these events, racking up points, you know, racking up some money list value as well, and you know all of that plays into, you know, elevating the stock, elevating their individual brands.
Right, and it's cool to see because we worried about this field, and the PGA Tour, in my opinion, got one of the best outcomes they could get. Really good story, really good couple players there. So I thought that was really fun for the PGA Tour.
The PGA
got
Tour
what they needed.
Has gotten so, I don't even want to call it lucky.
Right.
They've been so fortunate.
Turns out that's where the best golfers are.
To see the kinds of finishes we've seen. I mean, it feels like the entire year now. I mean, it feels like it's at least been 4 or 5 weeks in a row now where we have had like the back nine on Sunday has mattered.
Right.
And I don't recall that happening a ton before. So maybe there's something to this new setup where you're putting certain players in certain situations, and all of a sudden, you know,
you got life-changing money on the line, so that's gonna make anybody, you know, really change maybe change their attitude or strategy coming into these tournaments.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of life-changing money, that's life-changing money. This one is really interesting to me. So Chares Howell III gets his first win of 2023. Also happens to be his first win in quite a while when it comes to professional golf. Peter Uihlein, Brendan Grace, Paul Casey, Cam Smith, Brendan Steele round out the top 5. Crushers won in that event down in Mexico. I just want to say that for a guy like Chares Howell III, going to LIV was the smartest thing he ever could have done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we talk so much about the LIV Tour. I mean, if you look at the LIV Tour, you look at who they have, it's all guys that can't, mostly made up of guys that can't win on the PGA Tour. I would say about 80% of those guys are saying, maybe even more than that, are saying, I can't win again. Let's go take the money and ride out my career.
Yeah, so...
I mean, there's a few exceptions, like Cameron Smith. Dustin Johnson's in his own category. He said he just wants to kind of be done. There's a few other guys that can still win. Bryson, Patrick Reed, I think, could still win on the PGA Tour if they played. But, yeah, most of them are just kind of running.
Chares Howell won a combined $2.75 million from his 3 PGA Tour wins in 609 starts. He wins $4.75 million in his 6th LIV start. That's incredible, right? Mm-hmm. Insane money for a guy who I would just like to say was never going to win again on the PGA Tour.
He was always good at sniffing around a little bit, never really threatening.
He was never going to win again.
He was good at cashing per se, and he's doing that already in LIV.
This is a huge problem, I think, for LIV.
Yeah.
That hasn't really been poked at yet. This is exactly what LIV didn't want to have happen, right? You don't have your stars winning.
Right.
And you have guys like, no offense, Peter Uihlein and Chares Howell III being your headliners on Sunday, while the PGA Tour, I grant you, a couple of guys that aren't household names compete, but compete in a way more competitive environment.
Oh, for sure.
They went to a playoff. Chares Howell wins by what, 3? Who wound up winning the individual side by 3. You've also got the fact that LIV made it very clear that they are really prioritizing the team aspect of this.
Yep.
So the couple times I checked the leaderboard over the weekend, you get sent to the team leaderboard first, and then you have to like go over to the individual side.
Which the Crushers also won wire to wire.
Right. So, but this is just I think that is the worst case scenario of what could happen if this continues to be the case with LIV. I think they will have a really hard time. And we're going to talk about ratings in a minute. But I think it's really tough. What were your takeaway thoughts on the whole LIV? I think you watched more of it than I did.
I watched a good amount. I watched it every day. I'm just a fan of golf. I definitely would rather watch the PGA Tour, but just with the first event of the year, I watched a good amount. It's just interesting. They play music the entire time. No doubt it's pretty different. It's pretty funny. To me, the visual is pretty funny. You have like Dustin Johnson lining up for a 20-foot birdie putt, and Pitbull is just blasting in the background. So that's just it's just a hilarious visual to me. Some other takeaways I thought, just watching like Dustin Johnson's group, marquee group, it looked like a club championship final at a Muni golf course around the green. There was not one or two deep of fans. It wasn't that many. But to be honest, the LIV when PGA Mayakoba was there, they didn't get a ton of representation or fans at the PGA Tour event. So I don't really know if it's a big stop for people, but it is an interesting visual to see. I thought CW did a nice job kind of showing it. I think just with that shotgun start, you just always see golf shots. They show a lot of Dustin's round, Friday and Saturday. He was kind of out of it on Sunday, so they didn't show him as much. They show a lot of Dustin, a lot of Cameron Smith. Obviously, they're stars, right? Yeah. And you jump around to other shots. It's kind of similar to a PGA Tour broadcast in that sense. But there's always someone hitting a golf shot, which is really cool. Yeah. They don't really do They do some prepackaged sets of what maybe you missed, or they go and take a look inside the cabin with Faraday every once in a while, to which everyone is not a big fan of. But they're not a big fan of that on the PGA Tour either. So I thought they did a nice job kind of displaying it, but I'm interested to see if they're on their next event in about a month, if they get better fans participation, in that, or if that's really going to be a problem for them.
Yeah, I think that's the big challenge for them at this point. Yeah. I don't think it necessarily matters as much if there aren't a ton of people actually at the event. But the visual that you're left with watching it on TV, if you just see there's hardly anybody there, is tough. Not great. Like that's not a great image to send out.
Way more people at the Honda Classic than there was at LIV Mayakoba.
Right. Yeah, by a long shot. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Also in the United States, I guess that changes things. But
yeah. But that was a criticism of LIV going all the way back to last year. Events that were held in the U.S. Fans showing up was. It just wasn't.
They're giving away tickets.
Up to it. Yeah, whatever. That part of it is what it is. So let's talk about the rating side of this, because the biggest storyline that we've had the first 2 months of the year has been what does this TV deal mean for LIV? So obviously a ton of chatter about that, but also LIV only registering a 0.2 on CW in terms of ratings. That means about 200 to 250,000 people tuned in. Some affiliates in the U.S. actually chose not to run it, so CW affiliates scattered across the U.S. opted to run other things other than golf, apparently. The Honda Civic the Honda Classic, by comparison.
It is a Honda Classic, though, the Civic.
It is a classic. Registered a 2.4 rating, 3.8 million viewers on NBC. That's 8% lower than last year on CBS, but that's a 37% increase from 2017. So you kind of see the dynamic there. Year to year, not a ton of change, but the big picture for the PGA Tour, the long view, is that things are improving.
Yes.
Now, after looking at these numbers, I might say that things can only get better for LIV. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine they'd be much worse than this, but I really wonder, I don't know that the network has as much to do with it, but if you're showing a sporting event on some kind of tape delay or some of these events where they're overseas, I genuinely wonder if there's a chance that they could this might be their peak in terms of how many people watch.
Oh, I would agree for sure. They'll peak in the U.S. events, North American events, than the tape delayed ones. I'm interested to see. I mean,
is LIV in trouble? Do you think LIV's in trouble if they can't?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, if they can't produce better numbers than that, especially going against the Honda Classic, I'm guessing their next event in about a month will be going against an opposite field or kind of a lower field event for the PGA Tour. So we'll get a little bit more information then. But yeah, certainly, you got the panic button out if you're LIV. You're expected a little bit of better ratings than that, I would think, if you're an executive for LIV. But yeah, not a great showing.
Yeah, it's all around tough. I don't know.
Let's talk about the PGA Tour real quick, but let's talk about the PGA Tour versus LIV debate. I want to talk a little bit more about, just so many fans talking about, well, the PGA Tour is a weak field this week. And I just, talking about Chris Kirk being a nobody for winning the PGA Tour event. And I'd like to argue that a little bit. I know he's not a household name. When you think of golfers, you definitely don't think of Chris Kirk. He's got 5 PGA Tour wins, which there's not a lot of guys in my mind that have 5 PGA Tour wins. He's been there for about 10 years. Like I said earlier, it includes a PGA Tour playoff win. So a nobody is a little bit of a stretch for me. If I think this is a really good win for Chris Kirk and one that I think PGA Tour really needed too. For a guy that's been there, not a random guy per se, to have win is very big.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, sure, not a household name, but at the same time, the product was better. And that's really all it comes down to, and that's kind of where I left it. And week in, week out, we're seeing that time and time again. PGA Tour's putting a better product out there, and I think that's really going to be the case this weekend.
And I think your hardcore golf fans are going to not as much worry about, where Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau are playing and LIV that week. They would rather watch the PGA Tour.
Right.
Because you get just better golf. You're watching guys grinding on a Sunday and even any day, trying to make differences in their lives. Like Eric Cole, he set up this whole career the rest of the year. So I think that's really going to continue to go that way, and it's going to be hard to pry people from the Honda Classic over to LIV.
Yeah, it's a tough sell, especially when you look at the leaderboard and that those marquee names aren't competing.
And the leaderboard setup is terrible in my mind for LIV. I don't know if it's like the NASCAR style leaderboard. I know it's not exactly the same. So you get that it's up the whole entire time and never comes down. It's on the left side, and everybody's name is way too long. So you have to have abbreviations of their name. And if you're not a LIV golf fan, you don't necessarily know who it is.
Right.
So you're looking at you see like C for Chares Howell, you would see like C.HOW. And they might even put the third out there. I'm not sure because that's part of his name. But in like me looking at it, or you looking at it, you can tell who it is. But like if you're just tuning in as a golf fan, you might have to think twice until they either A, show a shot, or B, talk about him on the broadcast.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is ideal.
No, it's not. It's nothing about I
don't need to see the leaderboard the entire time.
Is ideal right now.
I don't need to see the leaderboard the entire time.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that.
Yeah. No. I agree. All right. Let's shift gears.
Real golf now?
Real golf.
All right.
Not exhibition golf. Go ahead. Take it away.
The Arnold Palmer Invitational this week at Bay Hill. This is always a really fun event. Arnie's event, which people really care about. The 4th elevated event of this season, a $20 million purse. So we go back to that big $20 million number for elevated events. 120 golfers, par 72, about 7,400 yards. And as it is a Florida course, there is as I would say, a pile of water. So that's something that deters players and makes them take a lot of times less than driver on a lot of these holes. 75.
One of the most iconic golf courses.
Yes.
Ever.
7,400 yards, par 72. That's not long, but a lot of these holes you're taking less than driver.
Yeah. It's what I guess. It's one of the golf courses that really became, I would call it, famous during the Tiger era, right? Yeah. Featured on a lot of video games and stuff like that. But just, maybe not the most challenging golf course to current standard, to modern standards.
If
but
you're in it down the middle, you can
wrap
it up, yeah.
Right. It's just a place, though, that is so iconic and so important to the game that it makes this event elevated even before the quote-unquote elevated status of what the tour is added in. Money.
We had Bryson DeChambeau taking over the water on 6 a couple of years ago. That was really cool. Yeah. We have other players doing cool things, especially Rory McIlroy talks about it this course not being that super long, but he says, you take care of the par fives and you survive the rest of the golf course by just, kind of not killing yourself at all, and you can have a chance to win this tournament. So
yeah, and look,
don't need to go far.
And I also don't expect to see, I didn't go back and actually look at what the finishers or what the top 10 have finished at in the last handful of years.
I don't
think it's going to be like some of the events that we see in January where minus 26, minus 27, minus 28 winning.
Right.
So like I think that's, within reason. It's not, say, a major caliber golf course, at least not in traditional setup, but it's still a great golf course.
Do you think this event lives up to the hype of the last couple of elevated events?
I mean, I don't really see a scenario where it doesn't. Like, this is, to me, we are in, yes, the PGA Tour is set up for a letdown. What does a letdown look like? Does somebody win by, 2 or 3 or 4 strokes, and maybe the back nine isn't as competitive as the back nine on Sunday has been for the last month and a half? Okay. I guess that would be a letdown, but that's still going to be super exciting, and golf fans are still going to be glued to their television sets watching that on Sunday. You just are.
I just don't see how you can get that many good players together. I won't even start naming them just because there's so many good ones, and you can have...
It's literally the best golfers on the planet.
Having a runaway event is challenging because that means that they just have to get out to some sort of lead, and you have to have so many guys not playing their best that week, and that's just really hard because in my mind, you're going to see a packed leaderboard on Sunday because that's just these caliber of golfers. They don't go away. I mean, you look at like Justin Thomas last year in the PGA, he was way away and ended up winning the event. So these golfers are never really out of it until it's over. So I would expect even if there is someone trailing by or leading by a couple shots come back nine on Sunday, it's not over.
No, definitely not.
Let's get to our picks. How about that?
Sure.
You want to go first for your favorite outright for the week, or?
Yeah. So it's funny because I feel like it's just been the same every time I look at the odds for these elevated events. I feel like I'm seeing the same names in the top 5 over and over and over again. Rahm, Rory, Scotty, Max, Colin. They're your 5, 6 favorite guys. My pick to win out of that bunch, I would put Rory and Max. Max Homa, Rory McIlroy. Rory's due for a rebound here. He just is. He's kind of just not really done much at all. But not abnormal for him. He has proven to be streaky in this way. You'll kind of like forget about him for a couple months, and then all of a sudden he'll rattle off a crazy run for 6 or 8 weeks.
Right.
We saw it happen last year during the FedEx Cup playoffs. Got hot at the right time. Played the best golf coming down the stretch. So my pick to win would be Rory. I think he combines the right things. Obviously, it's the ball a long way. Has the rest of the game to go along with it, and would be a great addition to this storyline that we're seeing involving Jon Rahm, Max Homa, Scotty Scheffler, like the 3, I think what a lot of people consider to be the 3 best golfers alive right this second.
Yes.
It would be a great storyline reminder. Hey, Rory, he's still here, and don't forget, he's probably the actual best golfer out of that bunch.
Especially when he's hitting and playing well, there's no one that can beat him.
I mean, he has the best all-around game.
I would agree.
What about you? Who do you have for a pick?
Not pick Jon Rahm this week. I really had a hard time. I'm not picking Jon Rahm. It's not my pick. But I really had a hard time looking through the leaderboard and doing some research about it. But I'm going with Justin Thomas, and probably for some similar reasons that you are going with Rory. He's been kind of playing well, too. Hasn't really ascended to the mountaintops this year yet. We haven't seen him win in a little while since PGA last year. So I'm taking JT, and I'm liking it. But I would not be surprised if Jon Rahm just wins again.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to pick against him. He's the hottest golfer right now, and the second, I would say, Max Homa, who is the second hottest golfer right now in terms of how they've played since January 1st.
Out of the state of California, though.
Is right, but also was unable to slay Rahm, 2 weekends ago, and had the opportunity to do so. So we're in a situation now where it's I guess as much as anything Rahm's to lose
for sure.
Long shot pick. Who are you watching as a long shot betting value?
Taking a page out of your playbook. So I'm going with Sam Burns. 40-1 that I saw this morning on the Green Book. T9 here last year.
Yep.
Knows how to win. He's got 4 PGA Tour wins. Just kind of waiting for the Sam Burns to come back alive. We've seen the last couple years. Haven't had a win yet this year, so we'll see if he can do it.
This feels like a course that Jordan Spieth at plus 4,100.
I think he's played well here a couple times.
Could do something. Obviously, he's just kind of been here and there, nothing really, crazy.
He's 4,100.
Yeah, he's plus 41. To me, that's a great value. You want to talk about value?
That's really good value.
That is a great value for a guy who, this isn't a course that you have to hit the ball a million miles.
No.
This is a course where if you just putt really well, and you're able to control those, 150 in shots, all of a sudden you can be, you can fire 18, 19 under and maybe win this thing.
You sure can.
You know?
All right, let's talk about our DFS lineups. I can do a little victory lap. I won last week.
Congratulations.
Got a win last week. I think all of us finished outside of the old money line.
Yeah. Paul cut me by a half point.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he finished, 313.5. I finished 313.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Tough.
That is really tough. I got you guys by about 30 then. I was still out of the money, though. So we turn a new leaf and go on to this week for the Arnold Palmer Invitational.
God. Hopefully it turns out better.
Taking a look at my team. I got to have a Canadian in there.
Yep.
That's almost a rule. Taylor Pendrith. And my main picks are Justin Thomas, like I just mentioned. Another guy I was between picking outright, Will Zalatoris. So they kind of headlined my team, JT and Will Zalatoris, this week. And my long shot pick, Sam Burns, is also in there.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I kind of went with, I think this is the method Paul was talking about a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. I used to do this a long time ago when I first started doing these kind of like team betting things. I'd just stack the top end of the team and then just pick
guys out of the picture.
Anything, basically anything that you can come up with. The guys that are valued between 6,000 and 6,500, which is exactly what I wound up doing this week. So, Jon Rahm, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa, three players off of my team. I feel like it's going to be kind of tough to not have a good weekend when you're rolling with those three leading your team. Stuart Sink, Aaron Baddeley, and then we've got the token Canadian, I guess, on the team. I always end up picking a Canadian, it seems. So that's where we are with that, and feel fine about it. We'll see if this yields better results than the last couple of weeks. I will say I have been incredibly disappointed because my best picks over the last, my best players that I've picked over the last 2 or 3 weeks have just missed the cut. And, with any of these team events, if you get to Saturday morning and you have 2 guys that have missed the cut, you're not gonna get to the money.
If you have half your team miss the cut, you're
3, you're toast. You're really toast.
You need only 2 at the most.
Yeah.
To miss the cut.
Yeah.
And Paul's team's a little bit of a mix of both of our teams in my mind. He's also headlined by Jon Rahm, as you are too.
Yeah,
JT in there.
Yeah, I went kind
top heavy
by my method to the extreme, if you will, this week. Rammer, but yeah, went JT and Tony Finau as well, kind of as my upper echelon guys, if you will. And we really went, I wouldn't say true bottom here, but Damon, Shelton, and Badley as well. So I guess my method to the extreme this week for me.
I have more faith in it than the plan that I've executed over the last few weeks.
I'm trying to go back to back though, so watch out.
Hope you don't, because I want to get a W here.
All right, our last topic. This is something you sent me on Twitter a couple days ago.
That's so interesting.
Do you think? Well, first of all, I guess I'll preface it with: do you think there should be an addition of a 5th major?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that it needs to be called a 5th major.
Right.
But we're doing all of these elevated events now anyway.
Yeah.
So we might as well spice things up a little more. Golf Digest tweeted this graphic out. Which course is worthy of hosting a major championship? And I kind of took. We were trying to decipher whether this was intended to be a 5th major or simply host maybe the U.S. Open or host the PGA Championship or something along those lines. I think my answer varies based on which of those scenarios is being played out. But assuming we're not talking about adding a fifth major, which of these courses that you're looking at in front of you? We got Pine Valley, Riviera, Cypress, Seminole, Muirfield Village, Sawgrass, and Harbortown. Which of those that you look at stands out to you as like one that could host a PGA or could host a U.S. Open?
Riv. Riv is a really fun course, especially every year, in that tournament early in the year. But I would love to see that in the rotation a little bit more. That's a lot of fun to watch. The California guys seem to love it, and other guys seem to love it too, especially those courses out in LA. They're very big fans of them.
Yeah, so I think, obviously, anybody who knows me knows that I Hilton Head Island has a special place in
big
my
fan
heart.
of Hilton Head.
I'm a big fan. So Harbortown, to me, checks off enough of the boxes. And this is the thing, like, my logic isn't so much cornered into, like, I know TPC Sawgrass is, I think, the obvious pick out of the bunch.
Yeah, the most iconic, probably.
Because it's already, people already refer to the players as the fifth major.
Fifth major, right.
But I think, if we've learned anything from the last few years in the growth of the WM Open out in Phoenix, in Scottsdale, you want a place that can be an event, a destination, right, something that stands out. And, anytime you put an event like that, a major, on a resort, what is effectively, a destination island on the East Coast, it's a recipe for success. I mean, it is, in my mind, a guarantee that it would be an awesome event.
My addition is Oak Hill in Rochester, because I just selfishly want to watch a major every year.
Yeah,
we get to this year at least.
Well, see, and that's a whole separate debate, because I don't know that, depending on how this year goes, I don't know that we'll even see another PGA championship at Oak Hill with the new schedule, because it is going to
with May. Yeah, well,
putting a golf tournament on
New York
in Rochester, New York, in the beginning of May.
Right.
We're not talking about like the end of May, basically June. We're talking practically the beginning of May.
Oh, it could be beautiful. It could be like nice.
It could be
rain.
75, or it could literally be snowing.
It could snow, yeah, or the best chance in my mind is it just rains.
Yeah,
because that's what happens in the spring here. It seems like. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully we get good weather. But oh man, I hope.
The other thing too,
I'm a little scared. I know Tiger Woods said he's going to play in all the majors and hopefully a couple other events. I'm just a little bit scared that if he sees if there's a bad weather forecast, that he could pull out, because if it's a
Tiger,
bad
if
weather
you're listening,
day,
Rochester, upstate New York in May.
Yeah,
it's
beautiful.
It's a real no way.
No, if he's listening, it's absolutely beautiful, because we want him to come here. It's the destination. It's. I
don't want to watch the poor guy limp around for 2 days and then miss the cut.
I'd love to watch. I just love to watch Tiger.
Garbage
brings a different buzz.
Yeah,
the other buzz to the area.
So the other thing too is, with regard to this list, there's going to be tons of debate about these some of these courses aren't challenging enough, whatever the case may be. Just like we talked about Bay Hill. Look, if they dry out and speed up the greens, and they let the rough grow out.
Right.
Any golf course becomes challenging in modern golf. It doesn't have to be 8,000 yards long. It doesn't need to be this heroically narrow, tabletop style golf course. It can be any of these. So a major could be held at any of these venues that we had on the graphic earlier.
Agreed.
Just can.
All right, I think that's enough for today, Josh. We'll be back next week with another episode of the podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. Be sure to head over to our TikTok at Out of Bounds Golf Pod and our Twitter account. And remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website at FingerLakes1.com. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Out of Bounds FL1. See you next time on Out of Bounds.